Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Phil. I'm your host, and today I am joined by Rach Davis, and we're going to be talking about ourselves. I think that's the best way to describe this. I was going to say like it's a big topic, but really it's just this is based off a. I've been a little bit more active recently on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of great facilitators on there, and so I've been reading a lot of posts. And as stuff resonates with me, I quickly send them a message just to say, hey, what you just said really, I get that a lot. And I think that's the I would say if there's a silver lining positive about social media, I think that's a big part of it, right? Like finding some people who you resonate with and you're not alone in a thought and feeling. And when people share, you can go, yes, me too. And then my encouragement to people is if you see that, then just say hello to them. Like that's a good way to connect because they relate to you. So that's the reason I reached out to Rach because you ended up saying, and I'm going to read some of this post out and we can talk about it. But you said I'm a neurospicy selective introvert, and when you facilitate, you're usually 300% switched on in the moment, noticing energy shifts, crafting experience. Strategic listening or pivoting is my superpower, but then when it's over, I crash hard. So that this is like the part where I'm like hugely resonant because and I hope that people listening to this are also. I don't think it gets talked about to an extent enough because I think that if someone was to see probably you and I present, they would think like, wow, look at these fully engaging human beings and socially skilled and all of these things that sometimes people say to me or whatever. And that's just not a reality of who I am as a human being. So I throw us to you first of all. Like, explain a little bit what you mean by like selective introvert and where
Yeah.
the energy or the impetus came for even writing the post in the first place.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go back to something you just said before we started recording, where you're sometimes worried that you have like a podcast voice, like you go into podcast mode, right? Well, sometimes as a facilitator, I feel like, and I'm trying to work on this, right? That I put on a facilitator mask. Right? Like I go into a room, right? But I feel like I am still myself while I'm facilitating. It's just a different side of myself, right? Where I'm on, which is it's very interesting. It's just, my personality has the times where I need to kind of be by myself on my chair and reading and decompressing and not around a lot of people. And then there are times where I'm with a group. I want to help guide them. I want to help get them to a creative space. And because I'm doing what I love, I have all my energy in it. I'm hyper focusing in it, right? In that moment. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of me, right? Takes a lot out of my brain, takes a lot out of my body, especially when I do in-person stuff. The planning of traveling there and get there early enough and setting up the room and traveling back. And then I get home and I'm like, yep, don't talk to me for like a week. And it's interesting because I don't know if it's like something natural in us or something that's been shaped by my environment or the types of environments that I've been in. Uh, because I feel like all of us, our personalities change throughout life. Like we're never stagnant in one place. We're shaped by what happens to us. We're shaped by who we surround ourselves with, right? And there's inherent natural things too. But I feel like 20 years ago I wasn't that person, and now I am.
Yeah, it's
I don't know
interesting
if that
that
makes sense.
no, but no, it certainly makes sense to me. Especially the masking thing. I used to describe it sometimes because I work for an organization. I can put on the organization's logo, and that can be like I'm in work mode. So like work feel versus home feel is a very different human being, and I wonder if you resonate with this because I wonder if I have this a little bit of like facilitator personality guilt. I don't know if this is a thing. Maybe I'm making a thing. So facilitator personality guilt is that like I am, and I think I've got better at being more me. But there's
Mhm.
definitely moments where I'm like on the stage, or I'm especially when I'm in front of people. I'm trying to affect energy by my own energy because like it's an important part. But then when I come home or if I interact with like just friends who are unrelated to my work, I'm not doing that. And then I'm more quiet. I'm much and I think like, am I not giving my friends and family the real me? Or is it, like what part of me is me? Because when I come home, I'm definitely not that person. And I
Yeah.
feel like that, as you said, like don't when you get home, you're like, leave me alone. I feel that way when I get home of like, I'm socially burnt. And so when friends then say, hey, do you want to hang out? I'm like, hell no. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And I
but
cannot
I've
do
used up
like
all of my
happy
battery.
hours.
No,
Yeah, it's so
like,
funny because my husband is a huge extrovert.
yeah,
And
yeah. My wife's
but
the
he
same. So yeah,
and so he'll know like if I go to a happy hour with him or something, he knows the time 2 hours in. Like it's Rachel needs to go home time. It's like we have to have like a safe word or something and like get so no, but I think for me, both are me, right? Like it took me a long time to realize that. So the first part of my career, like the first decade of my career, I was in very corporate, very stringent environments, and I did feel like there was like a work me and a outside me, and it was kind of different. Like I was quieter usually at work, and then more outgoing outside of work. It's kind of flipped for me a little, where I could start to be myself more at work, and then I still need the downtime, but the downtime's not work anymore. It's it's the home time. So it seems to have flipped for me, which is why I think people just need to be okay with being human. Your personality evolves and it changes. Yeah, and when people ask me to hang out, like in real life, in person, like if they're in the same city as me, I'm like, let me think about that." I was like, I don't even like phone calls. I'm a texter.
I have a list right now of all these phone calls I have to make. And currently I've got 11. Partly I have to make them because I serve on some committees. I need to connect with people. But like, I've got this list. And I think, oh, I've done one today and that's it. Like I've had a full work day and the best, and I'm thinking, oh, I did my one. And I'm looking ahead. I've got weeks. I could push it off. But I definitely have that. Like, I think that I was reading, and I wonder if you've read this book. It's called Quiet by Susan Cain. And if you
I've heard of it.
haven't,
I have not
it's
read
a
it.
really good, especially for like the introverted personalities. Really, the big takeaway, and it's not a massive one, is like as was described in your post. It's there's a lot of energy related to what we do as in our role, and so when we have to be really cautious or conscious of taking what we need to recharge the battery. Like introversion just means that social battery is drained from social environment and it's not refilled. It's refilled through quiet and some time to ourselves, where extroverted people are the reverse. Like they fill up their battery through social engagement and isolation drains them. So
Yeah.
trying to like figure out like what is the best for you. You're in this period right now, and you described to me prior to, as before we started, you're in this period of like limbo, program limbo, where you've just finished one, you're about to start another one. You're in this transitional period. What are some of the steps you've done post the last one, and what are you doing pre the new one to get yourself set up, knowing that your
Yeah.
energy and being human is so important?
So I do a lot of different things. So not every project I have is a full on, very draining workshop, right? Sometimes I do some things behind the scenes that are workshop first driven, like strategy and you talked about being on committees. I help boards with things like strategy, and it's all workshop mindset driven. So there's like small workshops and sessions that craft that. So I also try to balance what I put in my work, right? Like the big workshop things and even meetings. Like, I don't like having workshops on Mondays or Fridays, right? Like there are things that I know that help me and also that help participants. So there's a lot of things I do in between just to kind of take care of myself, right? Like walking. I love walking my dog. It's a million degrees here though, so like really hot in Texas. So sometimes I have to do that like really early in the morning or like later in the evening. There's things that I like to do for myself. I have a big chair and a half in the living room, and I just love like sitting there and either like watching a TV show that I've watched a million times before on my iPad just to quiet my brain, or reading a book, or drawing on my Remarkable. Like there's things that kind of give me a reset in between things, which I really like to do. So that's kind of how I balance my own energy. And you mentioned something a little earlier that I kind of wanted to go back to about how what we do as facilitators is high energy. One of the things I've been learning for myself and actually trying to apply more is that a whole session, collaborative session, or facilitated session does not need to be high energy, high energy, high energy. So I'm balancing the flow of is there a dip in energy purposefully? Like what does that flow look like? Because hey, there might be other introverts in the room, not just me, right? Like how do I facilitate for people like me? How do I like what I want? And then how do I facilitate for people like my husband? Right? Like how do I understand where there's a natural flow in energy, right? Because imagine how tired I am if something's like high energy the entire time. Like, are my participants going to be able to focus and pay attention? Like, where can I put like mini reflections in there? You know, I learn a lot from every project. I'm like, wow, that was way too packed. I needed to have like a buffer in between, at least for us all to capture our thoughts. And for me to make my job easier for momentum at the end as a facilitator, to take a moment and have more discussion time or more time to take in what was actually documented, right? And I'm still learning that, like I have a 20-year career and I still have like a ton to learn about how I do this moving forward.
Yeah, and I agree with the sentiment of like consistently learning through the process because I think sometimes what we can do, and I know certainly I've done this, is I've flipped somewhat the opposite. Like, oh, I'm not accommodating so and so, so therefore I go so far the other way that then I alienate another group. So figuring out like
Overcorrection.
how overcorrection and think because there's so many of us. I think that, in facilitation, the hard thing I think in the work that we often do, and I was actually on a LinkedIn post and I was realizing this, and it's probably the way that you and I facilitate with the groups is probably very different. In yet we're all centered around the idea of facilitation is to make something easy. So we're trying to guide people through a process, whatever that might be. And I think that what I found is like if I've ever been a participant in stuff, I'm very hypercritical and judgmental around like the way I'm feeling about a program, and so I'm trying not to do it myself, but realizing all I'm ever doing is making it good for me. Like I want this to be the way I want it to be, and that needs to change in people's mindset of like, no, that's not the aim. My aim is
Hmm.
not to be everyone remember me. It's there's the process that's coming in. So how do we consider the like you described going from something that's really guided in something for an extroverted person, maybe has high energy, and then comes down to have a more reflective moment, maybe for those people who don't want to. It's
Hmm.
when we're asking for people to share. Are we making this very explicit that we don't need people to share? So we're not forcing people to share when they're uncomfortable. Like there's so many
Yeah.
layers to it that we have to consider. And that's what I would say as well for like people listening, for a facilitator. I actually think the part that exhausts me the most is the adaptability, that non-agenda way that we now facilitate. The thing that gets me tired at the end of the day is actually not the high energy activity. It's the watching and observing and changing on the
Yep.
fly. How do you do that in the moment? And you even
Yeah.
referenced like you make moments so that allows you to plan, like you give some reflection time. So it gives you, what other steps do you do to give yourself back the energy to actually pay attention?
Yeah, a lot of this, I'm learning techniques as I go, right? And I even in this last project that I did learned so much. In person is definitely different than virtual, right? So there's like different techniques for each of them. I think I've gone in like the 2 decades of my career, right? I've learned to go from a fill space person to a make space person, right? And so I've learned to talk less. I've learned to make more time for discussion in that kind of workshop space. And the hardest part for me is that a lot of my workshopping originally was around things like strategy and brand strategy, which is also a field that I consider myself an expert in, right? So balancing my expertise with my facilitation is something that I hope I've gotten better at, right? And one of the things I will do if it's a workshop where I am facilitating a strategy session or something like that is if I know something about the team and I have ideas about the strategy, I actually just like brain dump on a piece of paper before the workshop. Like I get it out of my head, because if it's in my head while I'm facilitating, it's going to want to come out of my mouth. Right. And so that's one of the things that I try to do before, if it's like a strategy session or a brand strategy session or something like that. I try to get that out of my head and let the people in the room know that what collaborative session time is about is respecting their knowledge and getting insights out of their head. Right. And so when clients come to me and they're like, "Oh, well, you're the expert. What do you think?" And I'm like, "We'll get to that later." Right? This is, let's have you tell the stories and do things like that. I think also choosing the right framework or method or approach for the group is really important. And part of that is talking to the participants ahead of time if you have the opportunity to. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to, but there's a lot of different ways you could do it. I've used video ask before where I've asked like a pointed question to participants and they can respond via video or audio or text, right? Because I know I would want an option of how I would want to respond if how I was feeling in that particular day, right? But if I do have the opportunity and it's a smaller workshop, I like to have one-on-ones with people beforehand, no more than 15 minutes, get to understand their personalities a bit more so that I can understand how to balance the session, because not every group you're never going to have the same group in a workshop. Like, it's always different. And that's actually one of the things I love about it, because it doesn't bore me, because even if it's the exact same agenda, it's going to be a completely different workshop with different people. And I think that's what I love about it. Getting to know those people and choosing the right approaches up front. So like a Lego Serious Play approach. So I'm Lego Serious Play certified. So that one requires everyone to talk and everyone to share their stories about their models, right? So that's really great for some groups. It might not be for other groups that have really difficult power dynamics, right? We might need to do something else before a Lego Serious Play approach or something like it's not a one size fits all with every facilitation method. I think also having enough in your toolkit that you understand what types of activities or what types of methods work for what types of personalities. And that's where that brain energy gets drained, right? And so I can't keep everything in my head all the time. So I have a little field guide, the little notebooks, right? And so if it's something like a multi-day or single day workshop and I know what types of mindsets I want people in with certain activities, I might write alternatives, like notes in my field guide that will spark me of another activity. So I'm not like on the spot being like, God, what can I do instead of this? Right? Because that's going to burn up my brain energy and I want my brain energy for the participants. But maybe ahead of time, I could just like make some like code words for myself. Like, one of the ones I love doing is my bunny behind the back activity, right? To help get people in a mindset of it doesn't have to be perfect, right? So the biggest thing is what mindsets you want people in and not just throwing activities in there, throw activities in there. So that's what I do. I know that was a really long-winded answer. I don't
No,
know if that
it was
helps.
no, it was great. And yeah, if you were to like try to guide someone who was brand new to facilitation, what would you prioritize the first thing they get good at? Is learning a lot of frameworks and then trialing them? Like I always like where's the first thing
So,
that they should do? Because if I was to go back, I would do stuff different, right?
yeah, I think if anyone would go back, they would do stuff different. And the answer I'm going to give you today will probably change from an answer I will give you in 2 months, right? So the very first thing that I would do as a facilitator is figure out your own facilitator personality, right? Like, what type of facilitator are you? And I actually have come up with facilitator archetypes. I know a lot of people have them. Having a brand strategy background, I came up with my own, but I don't really advertise it. I just use them directly with clients when I help guide them. If I'm embedded on a team and I'm helping them find their facilitation style, their philosophy, like I use it in that. I mean, I guess like I should put them out there in some form, but I'm like, yeah, I just use it in my work. So it's really kind of about what are those motivations for you as a facilitator? What drives you the most, right? Because you do better as a facilitator when you're being yourself, which is why I'm telling you both of those people are yourself, right? Because you do better as a facilitator when you're yourself. Otherwise, it comes off not genuine and forced. And you've been through those meetings. You know when people are not being genuine. And so, like, what type of facilitator are you? Are you someone who gets up there and jokes the entire time, like in a way that helps people, right? Like, are you someone who is very reliant on storytelling? Are you someone who's a caretaker and you really want to take care of the people in the room? And what is that balance, right? Because no one is just one personality, right? No one is. Whether you say you are or not, no one is. So there's a balance, right? Like, so I have this balance of like wanting to adventure and try new things with wonder and stuff like that, but also mentoring people, right? Like, so there's this balance for me in how I facilitate. Are you someone who really wants a lot of tactile things in your facilitation? Are you someone who would rather have, lots of discussions, right? And it doesn't have to be just one thing, but what makes you feel good when you're in front of a group of participants, right? And we know it's not about making you the center of attention, but you have to be comfortable in who you are and be who you are in order to make it effective.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on. So when I first was taught, it was about you are the behind the scenes. You're not really a part of the group. You're trying to grow, but knowing that if you are there and there's 12 people and you are the 13th person in a room, you are a part of the group, whether or not you
Mhm.
say you are or not, right? So even when you could say like, well, I'm not going to be here with you when you leave, but you're there right now. So there's no way for you to say like you could take yourself out of it completely. And I think that that's yeah, it's so important to consider like what energy, who are you? And the hard part I found over the years is when I go to conferences or I see other people present, it's like how do I look at them and say like, oh, they might not be the way I facilitate, but they're still a very effective way of doing it, and there isn't a right or wrong. Because I see this often where it's like people say like this is the way to do it. And I think that what we're saying is like there's not really the right way to do it, right? Like there's finding
Yeah.
out who you are because I think the mistake I see a lot of people make is they watch someone and then they try to emulate that person and then it completely flops. Like, why did this work for you and it not work for me? Well, like you're two different people.
Two different people, you do it in two different ways. It's like even if a cook or a chef makes the same exact dish, like they're going to have different like one little thing could be different and it could change the entire experience of it. And it could just be what plate it's served on, right? Like it's really I'm a huge fan of cross-pollination, so taking things from other industries and going out there, right? So like taking those bits and pieces but making them my own, remixing them, right? And that's the same thing you do with ideas, right? If you're going to facilitate creative thinking with people and tell people, hey, you want to look at different perspectives and different things, you also have to do that as a facilitator, right? Like there's not just one right perspective, and you have to keep telling yourself that as much as you tell your participants that, right? And I tell people that like I help people think sideways, right? It's not and my own career path has been like ziggy and zaggy and all over the place, right? It's not just about there is no this is the way. Right?
Mm.
There's no
Very Mandalorian of you there. Yeah. Wait, let me ask you this. What's something that you've zigged or zagged on recently? What's then been a thing that you've been like, oh, I used to do this all the time and then actually saw something different and I've changed it?
well, I have something from today that I saw on LinkedIn. So
Okay.
I haven't changed it yet, but my whole mindset was like, why have I never thought of that? Who's someone I follow on LinkedIn, and she posts like a ton of amazing facilitator stuff. Rebecca Courtney, and she why about 3 weeks ago, I did a post on LinkedIn asking people how they organize groups in an in-person workshop, and there's a great thread on it, and lots of people answered. And today she posted something about just using different color Legos, right? She had like a bowl of Legos and a different color Lego on each table and just splitting people into groups. And I was like, that is so simple. Why have I never thought of that? Like that's something like so I used to think about putting people into groups, right? Like I overthought this a lot of times. Like, should people pick their own groups? Should I like assign people in groups? Like how are they going to get different perspectives? And there's an workshop activity that I run sometimes with my husband, the tower competition, which I ran by myself this last big project. Let me tell you, it's much better, easier with a co-facilitator. But I used to be like, oh, well, we can't let them pick their own groups because they're gonna like gravitate towards people that they usually work with. And I'm like, oh, wait, but that's also gonna give them better breakthroughs as to what didn't happen in their groups, right? Like we're going to have better discussions because they're going to realize things and those aha moments because it's the activity is about how you communicate and collaborate with people, right? I have tried not to control things like that as much, right? And just kind of be like, hey, pick a group. Right? Like, I like the Lego thing and I might use that for certain activities and certain things. But I think part of what shifted for me is not trying to control every single aspect of the dynamics in the
Right.
room, because the dynamics teach things too. So,
Well, and that's something like I think, yeah, and I've definitely been having this thought of how do we make the workshops or the programs that we're leading, how do we make them representative of real life in a the whole point often is like to teach something that or to facilitate something in a way that's going to help them in the future when we leave. But if by being there we create all of these templates or structures by which we divide groups and pick what I'm first thinking of is like name activities or activities to learn people's names. If you just ask people to just say, if you don't know someone's name, you should ask them. Well, that might be a more natural way of learning names than would be like doing something complicated to create names. In the same way, like
yeah.
groups, if we spend a lot of energy doing that, is the lesson there that we have to always do that to form groups, or can we try to facilitate in a way that becomes more natural? That balance of like time, how much time do we have? What are we trying to learn? So much comes into play there.
Oh, yeah, the time is a big thing. It's interesting you say about names because I changed that up a lot, right? So this past one that I just did, I actually made name lanyards for everyone. So it was a camp theme. So I kind of did that around. But I thought to myself, where do I want people spending their energy? Do I want them writing name tags? No. I want them grabbing their lanyard and feeling a camp feel, right? And so I think it's more around the experience of it. What do you want people to feel? Because for some other ones, I have used like the We Connect name badges where it's not just their name and it says, hey, I've been thinking about blank, and they write that. So it starts conversations. So it really depends on what your desired outcome of the session is, what kind of mindset you want to be in them, how much energy they have, where are they coming from, like, and where are they going to after. Right. Like, did they just come from like this huge meeting and you're the last part of the meeting and their energy, like, do you need to like energize them in a different way instead of saying, write your name on this sticker? Right. Like, how do you want them to enter?
I love
So,
that, and I think that yeah, that really is like that adaptive nature of like. I think sometimes people will come in with declarative statements of this is what you need to do. This is the flow of how a program works or a workshop works, and that's just not the case. And I think that if you spoke to most people who have been doing this a while, it's like you kind of just as best as you can, you go with the flow. You have backups to backups. You have some ideas of where we're going, but the goals and the what's the aim at the end? How do you want people to feel when they leave the room? Those are the parts that draw the
yeah.
the framework or the plan, rather than I want them all to do the same thing every single time, so it's every single group is the same. That's not really the intent.
Yeah. And it's really interesting you say that because I feel like in the industry, I've seen we were talking about overcorrection earlier. I've seen overcorrections to both sides of this, right? We don't talk enough about how we put a workshop together. So we're going to overcorrect and just talk about theory and structure and blah blah blah, and no, and we're not going to put information out there on activities because people are over talking about activities. And then I've seen overcorrection on the other side where they're like, oh, we're just going to give you like talk about a database of activities and not talk about how to put it together. I think there is a nice balance between having that database of activities and also creating your own activities, right? Like remixing and basing on others and using those in ways that fit your personality as a facilitator, that fit how you want people to leave the room. I think it's great that there's structures out there, and I walk people through these structures when we're creating them. Like, how do you want people to, or how are people entering? How do you want people to leave? And what does that transformation look like? Okay, great. That's a loose structure. The answers to that are going to be different every time. And the answers to what transformation you want to build, the activities that are going to get you there, that's going to be different every time. Right. And so, I mean, you might have some core things that you lean on as a facilitator, right? And a lot of facilitators have specific workshops that they sell over and over again. I have specific ones that if a client wants, I can run a specific workshop, but it's always adjusted for that personality of the client, right? Like, whether I tell them it's customized or not, like, I personally always tweak it in a way that makes it effective for that client. So,
If I was to take us on a journey of what we've talked about in the last 30 minutes, because as I look at the clock, I think about we started with us very centralized in the conversation around like how we feel and our own energy. We transitioned into talking about how the group and how do we balance some of that energy. And then we moved into how do we teach this to facilitators and think about how do they plan. We've almost done the gamut of what I would call self, others, and collective mindsets. And so I
Yeah.
just want to appreciate you, Rachel, to be able to talk to us about all of this. I'm going to throw information about Rach Davis into the description, and you can check out LinkedIn. And this is something I would leave us with. I was thinking about this before. Facilitator 101 is connect with people in terms of grow your network of people that you're following and listening to and watching. And so if you're new, going onto LinkedIn, learning about some of the people on there, connecting to their second connections and doing that rabbit hole of LinkedIn for a bit, just to gain some perspectives and some differences. And then that next level, going from beginner to maybe a more expert, is be able to critique stuff along the way and not get stuck in a rut of doing the same thing over and over. So
Uh-huh.
thank you, Rach, for joining me.
I loved it.